Welcome to the Armani Talks YouTube channel. I'm your host, Armani Talks. In this channel, I'm covering communication skills for you to level up your way with words and become much more articulate. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing how to build a confident voice, and we're going to be breaking down a chapter from my book, Speak Easy: How to Be Articulate, Assertive, and Audacious Around People. This book is currently available on Amazon, Gumroad, and Audible. I'll drop all the links for the book in the description box and in the pinned comment right on below. In this book, one of the chapters I break down is the articulation chamber. If you're out of shape and you want to get in shape, the common sense advice is to go to the gym. The gym is where we work out our physical body. Now, let's say you have a voice that does not sound confident. Where are you going to go? You're going to build an articulation chamber. The articulation chamber is a segment of your living facility that you block out strictly for communication skills. And if you're curious, this is what my articulation chamber looks like. It could be very simple. All you need is a camera, a microphone, and yourself. And in this articulation chamber, you're going to get in the habit of articulating your ideas. At first, you're going to understand what it means to have a confident voice. In the initial stages, you may have thought, okay, I already know what a confident voice means. A confident voice means a deep voice. But later on in the game, your understanding is going to become more nuanced. Let's say you go to a woman and you're like, show me what your confident voice sounds like. And she starts talking to you like this. You're going to be like, wait, is that how you really sound? And she's going to be like, no, you said to speak confidently, so I spoke deeply. And that's when you'll be like, oh, wait a minute. Confident and deep are not purely tied together. So what is this confident voice? And the more that you are in the articulation chamber, the more that you will understand that confident voice means a congruent voice. To have a congruent voice, we can't just focus on the physical sides of us, like the breath, like the body movements, etc. We also need to focus on the mental sides of us. And this is where the articulation chamber becomes tricky, because we begin to make eye contact with a lot of the ideas that we always thought we knew very well. But the minute that we're trying to logically break down this idea is the minute that we keep hitting a wall. And as you keep pushing past that wall to still logically break down this idea, that's when you start to build a certain congruency in your voice. That's when you may develop a deep voice, but that's not necessarily a requirement. The bigger requirement is the state of how you feel as you're speaking. Do you feel worthy of speaking? Can other people tell from the way that you're sounding that you're someone who is well thought out? All this is going to be discovered in the articulation chamber. Plenty of people want to develop their speaking skills, but only a few people are going to put in the work. And hopefully, you're one of those few people. Once you're in the articulation chamber, there's going to be plenty of times that you may have defeating thoughts. You may be like, I don't know if I can do this. I'm pretty sure my voice is fixed. I'm pretty sure my voice can't change. And in those moments, it's very similar to the gym. Right when you don't think you can't do one more rep, now it's not a physical game anymore. It's a game of the mind. Can you squeeze out that one last rep? If you can, it works out your spirits. And if you can, it helps you for the next rep. It's the same thing with the articulation chamber. Just when you feel like it's time to quit, that's the moment you should keep articulating even more. And I want to share a story about a time when I realized how important it is to keep on going, especially with speaking skills. If you're ready and excited for today's story, go on and drop that like for me right on below. I don't know if you're familiar with the United States education system. What I do recall was a few years back, I would have 7 classes, and one day we would have the odd classes, And the next day, we would have the even classes with one class always being repeated, which I believe was class number 5. So let's say you have 7 classes like history, math, science, etc. You would have classes 1, 3, 5, and 7 one day, and then you would have classes 2, 4, 5, and 6 the next day. And it would just keep alternating between those two. For me personally, I loved odd days because I had this class called Technology Arts, which was a fascinating class, and it was led by this man named Mr. Nelson. Mr. Nelson, I believe, was in his mid-40s. He had a lot of different hobbies, and one hobby was fighting. He was a black belt in karate, not a first degree, not a second degree, not a third degree. I think he was like a 4th degree because he kept bringing it up to his students. One thing that I loved about that class a lot was a show that we would create. This show would be distributed to the entire school. The show gave a lot of updated events regarding the school. We would talk about announcements, pep rallies, even the weather. We had anchors, we had a weatherman, we had people who did the camera setups, the lighting, etc. Everyone in Mr. Nelson's class would participate in bringing the show to life. I was one of the behind the scenes guys. I was the guy that was responsible for setting up the cameras and transitioning from one anchor to another when they were speaking. So I was the tech guy, and I liked what I was doing. The 2 anchors, one's name was Gladys, the other's name was Connor, and they were highly charismatic in how they delivered the news. One day, Connor ends up getting sick, and apparently he's not going to be in school for the entire week. That's when Mr. Nelson comes to me, and he's like, "Yo, Armani, I need you to be the anchor for this week." I was like, "Be the anchor? Nah, man, I'm a behind the scenes kind of guy. Find someone else to do it because I have an important job too, you know." And he was like, No, Armani, you're going to be the one who ends up taking Connor's spot, okay? This isn't a debate. So when he told me that, I still didn't believe him. I still wanted to debate. I was like, "Mr. Nelson, you don't get it. Everyone is going to see me because these shows get shown on TV to the entire school. I don't think you understand how embarrassing this is for me." That's why Mr. Nelson is trying to calm me down. He's like, "Listen, Armani, most of these classes, they don't have the TV sets. Most of these people, they're going to be hearing the show from the little voice box in these classrooms. So do you think these random people can really recognize your voice?" And when he brought it up like that, I was like, okay, I guess you have a point. So I go on Connor's anchor chair, and Gladys is happy to have a new partner. She's like, "Are you ready, Armani? Do you need some advice, Armani?" I was like, "Pipe down, I'm too nervous." So I'm over here trying to get myself in the game plan. And that's when Mr. Nelson says, 3, 2, 1, we're live. We weren't really live. I mean, these were pre-recorded. And I started to read off the teleprompter. I thought I did a good job. Until the next day, I'm in class and I can hear the show coming on through the voice box, and no one can recognize my voice. I'm feeling good. I'm having a conversation with a few of my buddies, and that's when one of the buddies are like, wait, shh. Who's that voice? That's not Connor. Man, that guy's talking really fast. Who is that voice? Sounds so familiar. Wait a minute. Armani, is that you? I was shocked that this guy was able to tell that the voice was mine. But you know what I did? I started lying. I was like, nah, man, that's not me. Anyways, what were we talking about again? But this guy was not letting it go. He was like, no, I'm almost certain this is Armani. Hey, Miss Shepherd, what do you think? Doesn't that sound like Armani? And she was getting engaged too. She was like, you know what, Johnny? Yeah, it does sound like Armani. You know what? I'm going to call in for a TV to come in so we can see if this is Armani. So Miss Shepherd is now getting activated as well. And all these kids are bubbling with laughter. And I'm humiliated because I know what's about to happen. The TV gets bought in. The TV turns on. And there I am on the show reading like this off the teleprompter. The entire class starts laughing. This I could handle. What I couldn't handle was when I was walking down school, random kids who I never met in my life were pointing at me. They were looking at me. They were giggling at me. And I was getting embarrassed. The next day, when I go back to Mr. Nelson's class, I'm going there with a fierce attitude to let him know that I'm never doing that again. And you could tell that he was expecting that I was going to show up in a fierce attitude. So he had a commanding tone as well. I was like, Mr. Nelson, I'm never doing that again. And he's like, yes, you are. Go sit back in Connor's chair and let's get started again for today's show. I was like, all right, Mr. Nelson. So I sit down, and this time I'm feeling a little bit more talkative with Gladys. And she was like, ready for today's show? I was like, not really, Gladys. I don't think you understand what happened to me in the past couple of hours. She's like, I know. I was like, yeah? Well, what do you think you know? She's like, others were making fun of you, weren't they? I was like, yeah? How'd you know? And that's when Gladys said, because when I started, I was getting made fun of too. And then she continued. She talked about how the different kids in the school would point at her. They didn't like her delivery. They didn't like how she read off the teleprompter, how she would articulate herself. Some didn't like her voice. But time and time again, she kept showing up and kept putting in her reps. And as she was telling me this story, I couldn't believe it because thus far, the Gladys I knew was immaculate in terms of speaking. But the only reason that I thought she was always born immaculate was because I was seeing her walk. I completely forgot when she was crawling. And that's when she says, keep going, okay? Eventually, in a couple of weeks, these people are going to forget about all of this, especially when they see you figuring it out. That's when they're going to think that you were always like this. But they're going to forget when you were crawling. Right now, you're crawling. Right now, you're figuring it out. And eventually, you will keep on figuring it out. And that was the story from Gladys when she allowed me to understand that even though she was the top tier anchor in our class, even though she was routinely in front of the camera, she too had a process that required her to become a better speaker, a speaker who was congruent with their voice. So once you're in the articulation chamber and you're trying different things out, you're experimenting, you're hitting the roadblocks, those are the perfect times to recall what Gladys said. You need to crawl before you could walk, and you need to walk before you can run. If you want more practical insights like this into speaking skills, be sure to check out Speakeasy. This book will walk you from A to Z on how to be a clear, articulate communicator. Check out the book in the links and in the description box right on below. And thank you very much for joining the Armani Talks YouTube channel.